very much a character-driven story. I mean, we have
Right.
emotional characters in it, but we've tried to base it with science-based facts so that people are really educated and understand, you know, what Lyme disease is, but also what the problem is and why after 50 years, there's still no accurate tests. The medical community is still pushing back on a disease that, there's over 500,000 people every year getting Lyme disease, and probably, 10 to 20% of them might have lingering symptoms.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Woodstock Film Festival Let's Talk Film podcast. I'm your host, Adam Shartoff. Established in 2000, the Woodstock Film Festival is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization that nurtures and supports emerging and established filmmakers, sharing their creative voices through an annual festival and year-round programming to promote culture, diversity, community, educational opportunities, and economic growth. The 24th annual festival takes place September 27th to October 1st, 2023. So my guests today are filmmakers Lindsay Keys and Chris Hegedus. Welcome to the podcast. Lindsay Keys is a director, producer, cinematographer, and photographer based, I'm going to say, it says here the desert outside of Los Angeles, but I'm going to say New Orleans.
Right now I'm in New Orleans, but I might be back in the desert soon. So I guess I'm not based anywhere. I'm everywhere.
Okay. She has shot still and motion content for clients ranging from Bernie Sanders to the Whitney Museum. Her photography has been exhibited internationally, published in the New York Times, Time Out Magazine, Interview Magazine, and auctioned at Christie's. While attending Wesleyan University, Lindsay's health began deteriorating with no explanation. Upon getting a diagnosis of Lyme disease in 2015, she began working on The QUIET EPIDEMIC and spent the next 7 years dedicated to its completion. This is her first feature film. Chris Hegedus has been directing, shooting, and editing films for over 4 decades. In 2002, she was awarded the prestigious Directors Guild Award, or DGA Award, for Startup.com, along with D.A. Pennebaker. Chris has directed the 1992 Academy Award-nominated film The War Room. Chris is governor of the documentary branch of the Academy of Motion Pictures. Tell me first, and whoever wants to start, I guess I'll just say, Lindsay, you start. Tell me about your experience bringing the QUIET EPIDEMIC to the Woodstock Film Festival.
So the QUIET EPIDEMIC had a pretty robust circuit, and we were all over the country. And we always say, when reflecting back on that time, that Woodstock was definitely a highlight. I think there was a real sense of community there and togetherness, which didn't exist at some of the other festivals. So it was really nice. The speaker series were amazing to go be able to hang out and listen to, people who have been in this field for much longer than I have speak about their experiences. I didn't feel so alone in the challenges and the excitement as well of documentary filmmaking. So that was really nice. And yeah, I think that was just what was really nice about Woodstock, was just actually having contact with other filmmakers. It sounds so obvious, but a lot of the festivals that we went to just didn't have that. So
what was your health like by the time you're showing the film at festivals like Woodstock Film Festival? How was your health?
Well, I mean, I had COVID 4 times in one year. So yeah, I mean, Lyme disease compromises your immune system, and it was really hard I had to choose between staying at home and prioritizing my health, which I'm just not very good at, and going out and touring the film. I mean, even our festival premiere, which was at Hot Docs, I mean, I considered not going, and I got COVID there too. So it was a really hard time. I mean, Chris can attest to this. Remember at the Hamptons International Film Festival, we got back to Chris's house and she was like, "You need to go lie down." And I just face planted. I mean, it was exhausting. It was so gratifying and exciting, but I feel like I was kind of just like The Walking Dead, and some of the pictures are a little frightening where I look like a ghost. But yeah, so it was, my health definitely took a hit going to all the festivals, but I'm really glad that I did it. I can't imagine having missed out on that experience. So,
well, you mentioned the sense of community in the Woodstock Film Festival. It also happens location-wise be another hotspot for Lyme disease. I live pretty close in the Hudson Valley, and we always have ticks on us, on the dog, everything.
Yeah, when we were walking around, just everyone wanted to know, what are you here for? And whenever we would mention the film, I mean, Chris, right? Like, what percentage of people said to us, oh, either they themselves or someone very close to them didn't just have acute Lyme, had very serious long-term Lyme disease. And so I don't know why I'm still surprised, but I am. I'm still shocked that this epidemic is as big as it is, and that it's just remained kind of in the shadows for so long, and that's why we made the film, to try to change that.
Shed light on the shadows, yeah. Chris, can you talk a little bit about your relationship historically with the Woodstock Film Festival? I don't know beyond this film exactly what you and Penny's relationship with the Woodstock Film Festival was.
Yeah, we have a long relationship with the festival. I mean, we've gone to it, from early on, and very early on, Penny and I got some, career award, which was probably next to the Bong Award that we got from the High Times Film Festival. The most original awards we've gotten. Let's just say one had barbed wire on it and the other had a stake. Not a steak, a steak kind of going through some materials that kind of looked like it could be a roll of film. But anyway, they were wonderful. And, it was a small, intimate festival in the beginning. And, through the years, it's really grown. And I just loved going there with the QUIET EPIDEMIC. I mean, so many filmmakers have moved to the Woodstock area. It already was a super creative area, with musicians, and definitely I had just shot at a studio up there couple years before. So, it was like showing films to friends, and then also, the community was so invested in, learning about Lyme disease. Like Lindsay said, so many people had it, and it's always incredibly emotional when we show the film, because for somebody, at least a lot of the audience who've had chronic Lyme, it's the first time they've really been seen or heard, or the parents or friends who didn't believe them, really see the extent of, what this epidemic has really become.
As a kid, I was very eager. I was very active. I loved to dance. But those things about me started to change. Even though I knew something was wrong, I never imagined it would be this.
Empty meds. Those are all full. This is what life became.
There are more cases than HIV and breast cancer combined.
Right now, my hands are burning.
You could do all the right things and get bit by a tick, and it'll change your world forever.
I was having a lot of patients coming into my office with bullseye rashes, and about 80% would get better with antibiotics, but 20% would not.
Here's a disease that's affecting a lot of people, can be costly, and there's been a very active effort to define not Lyme disease away, but chronic Lyme disease away.
They saw nothing wrong in the laboratory test, and they figured she must be faking it.
This is one of the most controversial, divisive debates in medicine today.
The Lyme disease bacteria is definitely one of the smartest on the planet, who knows how to change forms.
Every doctor I've been to is saying it's all in your head.
You still have these doctors who are digging their heels in the sand.
Investigate the CDC!
If you could image this, I'm not sure there's a controversy anymore.
You have your answer.
I'm not going crazy.
You're not going crazy.
How many people go through this and then just go home and suffer in silence?
since you've shown it in other festivals as well that are maybe not in such hotspots as, like, say, the Hamptons or Woodstock Film Festival, is everybody like 1 degree separated from Lyme disease anyway, or chronic Lyme disease as the film describes the condition?
Yeah, I mean, at the SCAD Savannah Film Festival in Georgia, the screening was almost sold out in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of the week in Georgia. I was shocked. And afterwards, I was swarmed by all of these students at SCAD, who have personal experience and they're struggling. And I think it's just an important reminder that people move all over the place. Like, even if they didn't get infected in Georgia, or it was the same thing, Mill Valley, California. I mean, most people don't know this, but we know this now, having worked on the film. Northern California there are areas in Northern California that are just as endemic as the Northeast. And that's proven, that's backed up by data gathered from the ticks themselves. Yeah. But when these students were coming to me, we're just, it's such an important reminder that we're moving all over the place. They were from all over the country, and who knows where they got infected. They may have gotten infected in their childhood or on vacation during spring break or wherever. It doesn't matter where someone gets infected. All doctors need to know about this. And I think that's what was, that's what's so heartbreaking. In some parts of the country, the doctors in their areas, they won't even acknowledge that Lyme disease exists in that part of the world. And those people have a really hard time getting diagnosed and treated. It's hard even in the Northeast, but when you go to the South, it is a dire situation. So we were meeting these people through the film festivals. And it was very sobering.
I want to get to maybe the economics of it, but first, since we're already delved into the film in a more substantial way, I want to read the just synopsis of it, the log line, because people watching should know a little bit more about what the QUIET epidemic specifically is about. After years of living with mysterious symptoms, a young girl from Brooklyn and a Duke University scientist are diagnosed with a disease said to not exist: chronic Lyme disease. The QUIET epidemic follows their search for answers, which lands them in the middle of a vicious medical debate. What begins as a patient story evolves into an investigation into the history of Lyme disease, dating back to its discovery in 1975. A paper trail of suppressed scientific research and buried documents reveal why ticks and the diseases they carry have been allowed to quietly spread around the globe. By the way, I also, in that I'm in the Hudson Valley, I was telling Chris that I also work at a radio station. One of our advertisers, oddly enough, and it's usually businesses, but this was a case where it was an individual, and his name was Dr. Ken Leiner.
Oh, yeah.
It's Leiner, right?
Leigner,
who, of course, is one of the pioneers, I guess you could say, right, in the fight to bring not only to I suppose, cure and deal with it, but to also fight against this perception issue that your film grapples with.
Yeah, Dr. Leigner is a key part of telling our story. I applaud him for his courage. There are a lot of doctors who know all of the same information that Dr. Leigner knows, but they aren't willing to put their reputations on the line and go out and speak to, the reality of this disease. So it's pretty amazing that he was willing to go on camera with us and say all these things. And I think it's been healing for him in a way. He can let me know if this is true or not, but I imagine it's been somewhat healing for him to have a platform in this way where he feels backed up. He's not alone. He's not the only one out there, and that goes for all of the people in our film. So many of them have been screaming in the wind for decades. And when you hear it just from people scattered around, sometimes they sound a little bizarre. Like, how could this actually be true? Are these people really onto something? But then when you see everyone together in the film, you see them backed by evidence, you see them backed by science and the history, which again, most people don't know about. I mean, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into when we started this film. And Chris can attest to that too. I remember sitting in your living room, Chris, with you and Penny, and you were like, that you're not done yet, right? Like, you have a long ways to go. And I knew that. I did know that, but it was a really deep rabbit hole. And I'm really grateful for people like Lee and other experts to help walk us through that, because it's a minefield.
Well, it turns out that it's not only medical experts and related type of experts that are cynics or are cynical or skeptical about Lyme disease. Renowned film critic Owen Gleiberman wrote a review of The Quiet Epidemic Variety. The Quiet Epidemic Review, a documentary about chronic Lyme disease, needs to make the case, and does, that CLD, which is chronic Lyme disease, exists. Gleiberman, who's been, by the way, on my own podcast a number of times, acknowledges being a former skeptic of chronic Lyme disease. The Quiet Epidemic, the film we're talking about today, has opened his mind. His review joins others on Rotten Tomatoes, where The Quiet Epidemic's rating is currently 100%. Chris Hegedus, any remarks?
I feel so good that Owen kind of saw the film and really saw what we were trying to do. I mean, it's a very much a character-driven story. I mean, we have emotional characters in it, but we've tried to base it with science-based facts so that people are really educated and understand, you know, what Lyme disease is, but also what the problem is, and why after 50 years, you know, there's still no accurate tests. The medical community is still pushing back on a disease that, you know, there's over 500,000 people every year getting Lyme disease, and probably, you know, 10 to 20% of them might have lingering symptoms.
Yes.
And, you know, so that it's a lot of people, and, you know, they're still barely acknowledging it.
Another great little point that you sent me, a less flashy but just as exciting win. The Quiet Epidemic will screen today. Well, this would have been a few days ago now, at the Mount Sinai Icahn School of Medicine in New York City, to share this life-saving information with the medical professionals and med students who need it most. The screening was followed by a panel discussion with you, Lindsay, or was it?
Chris and I were both there with a doctor from Mount Sinai. Yeah.
Oh, great. Talk a little bit, if you would, before we start winding down, just about the Impact program, because now the film, actually, as we speak, the film is now available on streaming. It's doing spectacularly well, I think. You know, this is something that, like we said, you're probably, if you're not directly impacted by chronic Lyme disease or Lyme disease, you are a degree of separation from someone who is. So it's no wonder that everybody would be interested in streaming this movie. Talk a little bit about the Impact program that's associated with
yeah.
it.
Well, I'll also add quickly, I think a lot of people are impacted and they don't know it. A lot of people are connected to people who are impacted and they don't know it, right? Lyme disease, the test being inaccurate means that people go on to get diagnosed with other illnesses like, well, I'll put other in quotes, other illnesses, idiopathic illnesses with no known root cause, whose symptoms directly mirror Lyme disease, right? Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple sclerosis, ALS, Parkinson's, you know, onset mental illness. I was losing my ability to find my way home from work at 26 years old. I couldn't read anymore. Like, this illness can impact people in so many different ways. So, you know, all of these autoimmune diseases that people are coming down with, I mean, with no explanation, right? I mean, might it be that we just don't have an accurate diagnostic test for Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses too? So I just want to say that even the people who think, oh, I don't know anyone with Lyme disease, they know 20 people who have an autoimmune disease with no known root cause, right? So again, like, it's worth watching the film just to understand why the diagnostic test doesn't work. And we could have a more accurate diagnostic test. And I think that that's a really important part of this story. But so yeah, the Impact campaign, that's why we made this film. The very first meeting I ever took before even meeting my co-director was with the person who is now our Impact producer. I went to her first. I was like, this is possible, right? Like, people can make change with movies. And she was like, yeah, do it, go do it. So the film's streaming on, you know, Amazon Prime and iTunes and Vimeo on Demand, and that's great. But what, you know, we're so excited about these community screenings that are happening, like the med school screening that Chris and I were just at. That was amazing. People are signing up around the world to host screenings. We currently have 15 different subtitle translations requested,
Wow.
15 different languages. So this is not just a Northeast US problem, clearly. Requests from 12 different countries, so there's the community screening aspect, which is great. It's bringing people together to meet local allies and learn about local resources for those who are struggling to find help and just feel alone, or maybe they just want to be informed in the event that someone in their life does come into contact with a tick and they get sick, right? So this isn't just for the people who are currently sick. This is for the people who, this weekend might get bitten by a tick, or their child does, and they don't know what to do. So that aspect of the campaign is really exciting. The other part that we're really excited about is the congressional impact that we're just kicking off now. Chris introduced us to this incredible impact producer strategist named Bonnie Abanza. She's just a powerhouse, and we now have a long list of directives of materials to pull together that we'll be bringing to staffers, clips and our calls to action. And we're working with, trusted Lyme advocates who have been in this world for much longer than we have to come up with like some clear, how do we move the needle on this illness? It's been 50 years, right? So that's the other part of the conversation we're having now. And then I think lastly, and then Chris, if I miss anything, of course, I want to, there's just so much. It's so huge. I think what's really special about the film is what Chris mentioned earlier. People are feeling validated, some of them for the first time. So there are a lot of people who are suffering with Lyme disease, chronic Lyme disease, or their loved ones are, and they have felt so shamed by the medical community. And that is real. People are told you're faking it. It's all in your head. You're just trying to get antibiotic. Like who just wants antibiotics like that? This is one of the arguments. Like you just want antibiotics. It's like, what? Like as if people, especially children, don't have better things to do with their lives. Like these people, the forces that are trying to keep this down are just like grasping for straws here. It's just like kind of sad, honestly. I'm like, of all of the things that you can do on the world stage, like that's the person that you decide to become, like on planet Earth, like the little time that we have here. It's just, yeah. So anyway, the people who are feeling validated by the film are coming forward. Like the film got endorsed by Mark Ruffalo a couple weeks ago, and he shared publicly that he's dealt with chronic, I think he used the word persistent, brutal, persistent, misdiagnosed Lyme disease, right? And it's just I hope that more and more people, especially people with public profiles, start to come forward and share so that we realize like just how big this is.
Just share where people can website information, social media information.
Well, they can find us on the website for thequietepidemic.com and get information on the site, not only from us, but from a lot of the larger Lyme organizations that really have put forth on their websites exactly what to do, doctors to see, what to do if you get a tick, about sending ticks in to get tested so you know exactly what bacteria, viruses are on the tick. And they can see it on, as Lindsay said, we're on Amazon, we're on Apple iTunes and Vimeo. But people can go on our website. If they're a community, they can mount their own screenings. And, we're really hoping, besides our congressional push, to get more of the medical community to show the film to doctors, to students, whatever, because they need to have the information. They need to have the conversation to push it forward. Just last fall, 2 people in my family got bitten by ticks, and each one had a different therapy that was suggested by the doctor. One was the favored 3 weeks, and one was 1 pill. So much information needs to happen.
That is it for this episode.
Adam, very quickly, can I just add? So on Facebook and Instagram,
please.
We're sharing clips of the film. So it'll give people a little preview and a sense of if it's something that they want to explore more deeply by watching the full-length film. So our Instagram handle is @thequietepidemic, and on Facebook we're The Quiet Epidemic as well. So there are little teasers there. People can get a sense of what story we're telling.
And please share, while you're there watching those clips, share them, because that's going to have an enormous impact. Well, thank you both for being on this episode of Let's Talk Film podcast and Let's Talk Lyme disease. Don't forget to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Woodstock Film Festival. Thank you both really for participating.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.